Hey guys, welcome to the first annual Terp Indie Game Fest. My name is Jesse. I'm the president of UMD Game Developers here at the University of Maryland. We have 3 developers here for you today. After we'll have some Q&A, then we'll start playing the game. So our first up is Tumbleweed Express by DigiBrawlers.
Thank you for even saying that about my town. That's great. So all games now. All right, so my name is Matthew Moriello, and I'm, I guess, the project manager for the Tumbleweed Express. That is a game being put out by the DigiBallers, a recent LLC. In the back there is Andy Varshine, who's our lead artist, and Jacob Clayman, who is our lead design. And essentially, I'm really excited to have them here because I always get art questions and I can never answer them, so direct them immediately back to Andy if you have questions related to that. So I just want to talk a little bit about how our game got started. We are a Unity 3D game. We kind of came up with the idea of doing a travel defense concept, which kind of blends first-person shooters and tower defense games. And so we kind of wanted to take a look at tower defense and sort of make them a little bit more engaging and a little more real-time. I mean, they're a real-time sort of concept, but things come in phases. You're kind of locked into the level. You're not really moving around too much. And we really wanted to sort of play with that concept and see if we can make sort of a mobile, moving game in a broad world and sort of give that sort of large Western frontier sort of vibe throughout the entire sort of platform. Because, we came up with a game about trains. Came up with a game about trains because that was our game jam concept at the time. We started with the idea of tram combat. And so we pitched several ideas related to that theme. And we built the first prototype in November of 2011. And so the basic concept is you're in a steam-powered train, you're traveling across the countryside, and you have mounted weaponries, which are your towers in a tower defense game, that defend you from just waves and onslaughts of enemies. Very straightforward concept. And we just you have trains, so Western steampunk basically sells the rest of that sort of concept. As I was saying earlier, I am the project manager, the programming lead. I'm also a student here at the University of Maryland. And I guess we're all sort of evangelists for the game, so we're always trying to sort of get out there and talk about it and get lots of feedback from people who might be interested in playing our game. Any of the other titles that are up there are more or less just sort of this loose sort of concept that we have for organization, but everyone sort of has their hands on everything. It's just certain people need to make sure certain tasks are getting done. That's basically the only reason we have any kind of positions is just to assign responsibility to things so that we know who's doing what. As I said, we started in a small room. Maybe you can't quite see the pictures, but here's us down here concepting on whiteboards positioned over couches because we're in a small apartment. Working in basements, working on whiteboards. This is pretty much how our general weekends go as we're working on these games. That was originally part of the IGDA DC's quarterly game jam project. That was, again, in 2011. After we kind of came up with our initial prototype, we sort of said, well, we think we might have something here after 48 hours being really tired. We really thought we had something. So we sort of went into this rapid design phase where we sort of started writing down all of our ideas and formalizing them, and that process kind of took about 2 months. We ended up with a 40-page design document. I don't recommend you do that. It's a bad idea. You're going to have a bad time. But you can make a very, it's good to have kind of a concise list of ideas because that's going to, get, for an indie project, get you to the point where you can actually produce something. So if you have sort of a plan set, you can sort of refer to it and you sort of can identify when you're doing things like scope creeping, adding features that aren't really necessary, and sort of just getting out of, your original concept. So if you analyze our document, this is pretty much the major words that we talk about, things like players and levels and lots of talks about bosses. There's, Drill Car Jim is our main enemy right now, and the whole game is, overarched by the Dirigiboss, who will be introduced in later levels. And that was the first enemy that we actually concepted. So at the end of our first weekend, maybe this picture is not but maybe we could kill the lights a little bit. Thank you, Jesse. So you can kind of see, we have blocks and cubes. Those are our primary assets on 48-hour run. We sort of got a basic train design coming down the track, but you can notice it's actually to the right of the track. It doesn't actually sit on the track yet. First enemies that we kind of concepted were these drill cars that kind of came up out of the ground and then just proceeded to kamikaze the train, which is still a feature in our game. And so this is basically what we had. Really this was our only UI. You've got cash and hit points. And I think we have a shop interface that you can sort of, configure this train that's moving around here with the only gun we had created at that point. But still, 48 hours, November 2011, this is what we said, oh, there's an idea here. There's something interesting about what we've been concepting. And so now we recently participated in MagFest, and I'll show you what we had on Jam 12. So basically new sort of intro. Now we've got actual explosions. We've got a nice modeled caboose here and train. You can see all sorts of new customizable drill cars sort of being defended by different weapon types. We've got dirigibles coming down out of the sky. This is still kind of one-click kills, but we are now sort of experimenting with health systems throughout various levels. We're very proud of all the explosions. That was our most fun thing to work on. First boss encounter right here, that was again like being worked on right before MagFest to sort of test out this concept of doing encounters along the track to sort of break up what you're doing in each level. Newly designed shop. The original shop sort of looked like a giant Excel sheet because I designed it and I'm a programmer. So, and I'm not a very good programmer when it comes to UI. So my artists always tell me I need to, work on that UI skill. But I just like getting things to work. And then, of course, this is our final boss fight, which I can't even quite see right now. But that's good, because if you come and play the game, you'll get a nice, clear visual of that. But maybe if we killed the glare from the back of the rooms. But essentially, that's sort of where we were at the close of MagFest. So this is basically January of this year. And we'll move on. And so now we've sort of entered in a new prototyping phase where we're sort of designing new concepts. And hopefully we're going to take some of the feedback that we got from MagFest and get you guys to comment on it and give us, whether you like it or not, or if this is working. Oh, great, yeah, close the blinds after. Awesome. So this is our current team. Look at the pretty photo of us and some people missing, but yeah, a bunch of dudes working on a game. Beautiful, beautiful, right? So we have several programmers who are all actually graduate students, so we all work sort of when we can. When we started this project, pretty much everybody was a student. Several have graduated at this point, and so this is part of the work that they were doing during their senior projects. And so we've just sort of continued after they've moved on and started, big boy jobs. And the rest of us are still bumming around in school because we're career students and we just can't get enough of formalized education. We do have a problem. And so basically, just to sort of let people know what team goals are, because I think one of the most valuable things for us is having an overarching goal. So we're looking at kind of a 3-year development plan, and our ultimate goal is to submit to the Independent Games Festival. Hopefully we'll be doing that next year, maybe this year, probably not, but we'll see how that goes. But our original goal is to produce a multi-hour replayable game of sufficient quality to submit to IGF. And that's, as I said, a 3-year goal. So we have to have lots of little, individual milestones so that we can sort of track our progress along, because sometimes you're working, you come home, you show off what you've been doing, and the player says, doesn't look like you did anything in 48 hours because we were doing back-end stuff, so no one saw it. So that's kind of disappointing. So you need various milestones to hit and sort of, work on the morale of the team and keep people going. So example for today, our milestone for the Terp Fest. We've implemented a new track switching system. So previously the game sort of followed the track and you didn't really have any choice in where the train is going. So we now have a level that implements track switching, gives the player a little bit more mobility in the world, a little bit more choice to their final destinations. So that's definitely something we want to kind of see how we got that. And that was a very high requested feature at MagFest. So we sort of compiled all the feedback, got our top 10 features, and these are some of the ones that we've been working on. So as I said, track switching, an improved enemy health system. So now all of our enemies, they're not one-click kill anymore. They now have their own individual health tracking. And then we've also started to implement a tech tree for the caboose and the engine. So that's where you get some special abilities like radar, which is another very highly requested feature. And it's a little bit different from just building a train, building a turret on your train. So we're trying to mix it up a little bit with different attributes that you can apply to the train. Our production is pretty simple. We show up on a Friday, we prioritize, we do any design work that we need to do, and then we get right into building and testing. And then at the end of the weekend, so building and testing is more like a Saturday sort of activity. And then Sunday, we sort of integrate what people have been working on. And then, so that's one weekend for us. We'll do that whole cycle. Then we sort of move into sort of a review period. So we'll kind of look at the progress that we've made, kind of do a little post-mortem talk about how we can improve our process or the game, or just talk about priorities. Then we sort of move into like the monthly planning, and from there we sort of push out priorities that people might be working on by remote in between our jam sessions, which occur once a month. And so that work sort of can be slow. It's based on whoever's got capacity that month. And then from there we will sort of either hit some sort of milestone like today, or we'll just get to our next jam session, sort of start that whole inner prioritization and building cycle once more. And so that's a typical month for us. Basically, we were giving a previous talk about some of the tools that we use, and so this is just a quick rundown of just sort of things that are supporting us. We used to put everything in a Dropbox. Terrible idea, don't do that. Same thing, we used to put a lot of documents in the Google Drive, but then we had like 50 documents. Don't do that. We finally said, oh, well, after 6 months of working on this, we're like, well, we are definitely, in for the long haul. So we got smart, got into some version control software. We use a service called Assembla. It's free, which is nice, but they charge for everything else. So that's just something to be, fearful of. So that's why we started needing some, ticketing services, and we, needed something that was free because we're on a shoestring budget. So Bitbucket is pretty cool. If you're a student and you have a student email account, you get a free, task management sort of service and ticketing system. So that's a really nice thing. You can also combine that and use their SVN capacity, but since we're kind of entrenched, we're just not going to switch. We'll just use the two services. And then, of course, immediately we track all of our progress using Blogger. And I should probably toss up YouTube and things like that because we're always producing videos and things. So this is just sort of, these are the tools that we're using. They're all mostly free. And they're very helpful for us as a team, especially I can't say enough about version control. So if you're building a game, definitely be on version control, or else you're going to have a bad time. So feedback. We look for lots of ample time for feedback. Pretty much, like I said, we constructed the prototype in November of 2011. We took it out to show to IGDA DC that December. From there, we've been to the Baltimore Indie Game Showcase, Artscape. We've done a couple of Unity user group presentations. MagFest and Onyx Fest were great opportunities to get feedback, especially MagFest, because essentially 4 days of constant testing, 16 hours a day. It was wonderful. Our future kind of looks like today, Terp Indie Fest. We're definitely going to the Philly Too Many Games conference. That's our big push right now. We should be releasing a very large build for that. Finally, we're still sort of waiting to hear back on Artscape for this year. We may be doing a Kickstarter just to sort of help us with next year's costs, because we expect to be sort of showcasing it a little bit more at some bigger events that require money. And hopefully, Independent Games Festival, we're going to kind of make that decision in October whether or not we're going to submit this year or hold off. And hopefully we will be returning to MagFest and doing a Steam release at the same time, either in sort of a beta release or maybe a close to a finished product. We're still sort of piecing together that process, which is about to change if you've been following the news on Steam. So for our testing process, generally we do a lot of internal testing, but ultimately it's these sort of events that get us the most feedback because it enlightens us to things that we just can't see because we have tunnel vision from working on the project. So we frequently will be doing shadowing people and trying to identify weak points in the game by if someone is confused. That's an ample time to sort of say, is that something that we need to really work on? Are we not communicating that aspect of our game very well? And today we'll specifically be kind of prompting for specific feedback about the new features that we've been implementing. And so we're really excited to have you test our game. And of course, we'll move into this immediate process of sort of analyzing the feedback that we got to determine if what people are saying, is that something that's just frustrating them, or is it not fun? Is that something a feature that maybe needs to be cut because we're just putting too much work into it and it's not really it's not really adding value to the concept? Or maybe it's just confusing. We've been working on our UI. That's something that we've been working really hard to sort of revamp, and we have this battle menu inside the game, and it also looks like a giant Excel spreadsheet, lots of text. You can tell I worked on it. Don't do that, it's a bad idea. But people like it. Like at MagFest, people were playing it. People were using the system. Once they kind of figured it out, they understood exactly the value of it. So we know, and for people who like kind of micromanagement in games, they really found enjoyment from that sort of feature. It's not being supported visually. It's not being communicated very well. So we're convinced that those comments related to the confusion of the menu are not. It's just something that's frustrating. It's not that it's not fun, and that's a really important thing that we're sort of learning to do with feedback that we get. And so you have to sort of take the feedback and identify what the root issue is and sort of come up with a plan to solve that. And that's sort of how we sort of take the feedback that we get. We like to try to avoid some common pitfalls like overthinking things. We design out a lot of things, and we have, long talks and back and forth about them. They go on Wikipedia or, our wiki space for conversations and emails, and we spend all this time testing that we could be building something. So sometimes it's just better, and you'll see that today in some of our features, to just sort of put a draft out there and sort of see how people react to it so that we can sort of cut down on the overthinking. Not testing enough, we do a lot of testing, but you can always do more, and it really helps to sort of get feedback early in the process as opposed to late. And additionally, one of the things that we're really trying to avoid is feature creep. People suggest all sorts of cool things. We got a lot of really awesome features from various, conferences and presentations that we've been to. But ultimately, if they just start distracting from your core sort of functionality, then that's feature creep, and you sort of have to make that decision about what goes into the game. And we're sort of still experimenting, and we're still using your feedback. So this is definitely an opportunity for anyone to sort of give us a great idea and let us know how things are going and how it could be better. And I can pretty much promise that we will take all feedback into consideration. These are sort of all of the tools that are supporting us, into consideration. Anyways. So our blog, dirigiblallers.blogspot.com. Unity 3D is a great tool in general. I've worked in the Unreal Engine, and I think Unity 3D between those two Unity is definitely my top choice. All the same software that we use to kind of support our activities. And at this point, if you have any questions related to art, you can send them back to Andy. I'll take any other questions. Thank you.
So, is this a passion project for everyone involved?
Absolutely.
No one's getting paid?
No one's getting paid.
That's how indie works.
We occasionally pick up beer, for the other person. If someone does something really good, you don't have to buy beer that weekend, But we work in apartments. We sort of Friday night, we sort of pool some money together, make a shopping list so we don't have to leave, and then we lock ourselves in for 48 hours. And
awesome.
That's pretty much how that works for us, I mean, with the dynamics and scheduling, because everyone has something else they're doing in their real life, it's the best model that works for us to actually get stuff done in an efficient way.
So that segues into my next question, which is, you guys meet every month? Do you have a hard set schedule that you follow, or are you more flexible? How does it?
So essentially our jam sessions are planned out about 2 to 3 months in advance. So that's based on coordinating with everyone's schedule over those 3 months. And generally generally we always sort of pick the latter 2 weekends of the month. But for example, Memorial Day is in May, for example. So we're bumped up a week. We sort of have a deliverable coming up as well. So we're also bumping up a little bit of April. So it's flexible based on the needs of the team, but at some point we do have to make a decision, and if you can't make it, we generally ask people to sort of work by remote from home if they can, and if not, well, there's no harm done.
So you meet every month,
every month,
twice?
pretty much. No, we generally work once a month, so it's 1 weekend a month, and then that's pretty much between February to December. In January, we take a break to participate in Global Game Jam, and we also generally spend January, because that's generally an easier time after the holidays, doing any major design revisions. So that's when we sit down, and all we do is kind of review the design document and make sure that we're staying with it and making sure that any features that we're going to add are set in stone at that point. And then next year we'll do the same sort of activity when we're getting ready for sort of a release thing, and what features that we want to continue with and things we want to cut out to make whatever schedule we've got.
Cool.
How many of you guys are students?
Right now, let's see, 3 out of 4 programmers are graduate students. And let's see, I think that's all of the student population at this point, but last year, last December, I think the majority of us, the majority of the art and design people, Andy, Jake, both graduated. So they're now, in the real world. So that's the majority of the team at this point. But it was started as a student project. It's just we're continuing now that we're not students anymore.
Yeah, so I guess my next question is, how many people in the team would you say are probably staking their livelihood on this? Does that make sense?
That's an interesting question. I think that everybody has hope that this will be a project that is going to go somewhere, but I don't think that people are necessarily expecting that.
Okay.
So it's a passion project. So ultimately, even if it goes nowhere, it still goes into portfolios and things of that nature. It's much better to have a finished project out there than it is to be like, well, I've worked on stuff, you know. So ultimately, it's going to help their career moving forward as long as, you know, we get to the point where we're finished.
A published title.
Right. So I mean, that's an easier sell in general, and so that's certainly the goal. And if I make $1, I will consider that a win. So that's fine. But I hope for the best. And I think that it would be awesome to be in the situation where we'd have to make that decision. So that would be a great problem to have.
Do you have anybody that's focused on the marketing plan?
That's
Moving forward?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a constant question, and generally speaking, I'm sort of doing a lot of that, sort of working forward. And we're constantly having conversations about, you know, are we going to do Kickstarter? What are we going to use it for? How are we going to make sure that we're, you know, being genuine to our backers in that sort of situation, as well as we really want to do a Steam release, and those are our primary focuses. And then, you know, we do general, you know, usage of social media, press releases, things of that nature. So we are thinking about it, but we're not at the point where it is a super high priority. But it is something that we have to be constantly putting effort into.
Do you have, like, because I found one of the hardest things is getting a following. Do you have like a fan following, so to speak?
I mean, I really can't calculate it. I can tell you how many likes we have on our Facebook page. I can tell you how many views. I think it's like 129, 112 to 120, somewhere in there. And, you know, our blog does receive a lot of traffic. I don't know how many botnets are, you know, viewing video games. They are welcome to view and post on our, well, maybe not post, but they are welcome to view our webpage and download it. That's fine. But yeah, you know, so I mean, we are actively pursuing these sort of angles, and we do monitor that sort of thing. And of course, the good thing is when we do post things, we do see response from people, so that's generally positive. And you know, we do Twitter. People actually tweet us. It's great. So that's good for us for now.
How many followers do you have on Twitter?
Oh God, none. No, 26, 27. We basically got to MagFest, and we were like, and then one of our developers tweeted about being there, and you know, we all just looked like, oh my God, we don't have a Twitter. We're not on there. We can't receive tweets. And it was a good thing because we immediately set it up, and then some drunk people tweeted us. So it was awesome. It was a great time. It's good to get that kind of response, like within a day of setting it up. Awesomeness. So, you know, got to have the little victories in our book. Any other questions?
Price point?
Price point. Great question. Should I really say that now? This is being recorded. I don't really know. It'll be you know, we're certainly not looking to like make a ton of money, but we do want to like get some return on our time. So I expect it to be, you know, equitably priced for anyone who's a Steam user. I'm sure they'll be very happy with the price point.
Shoes?
Oh, you know, I'm dancing up here, right? Yeah. Next is politics. So vote for me.
So you guys are making a game for the Steam platform. That's the end goal.
Primarily, we are simplifying, right? There's a point where we were at the Baltimore Showcase, and at the time, we had a very terrible UI, and we were both supporting keyboard and mouse as well as an Xbox controller. Wouldn't this be a great game on Xbox Arcade? I think so. It's my personal, you know, cross to bear in this project. I'd really like to see that. But in order to sort of gauge how much work we can actually get done and sort of set some believable goals, Steam seems to be the most the best platform for both distribution and for getting at various markets, because they're now supporting Windows, Mac, and the Linux community, and of course, so is Unity. So, and those are free, you know, to export to. Well, maybe not the Linux. I'm not sure.
Linux is free.
Linux is free. Cool. So that's all the three major platforms.
Sorry, I was wondering because you mentioned mobile at some point, like.
Oh.
The interface being friendly to
Yeah,
that.
so that's an interesting thing. We've recently been testing a build that allows for a co-op experience, and so basically people it'll really work for anything, but ultimately what we're sort of envisioning is that you can log in from your mobile phone, and so your friend is playing on their PC or whatever system they're running, and they have all of their train cars configured, and so what we kind of have is a loose mock-up of someone logging on their phone and taking control of one of those train cars and acting as a gunner for their friend. So that's kind of we didn't really want to talk about that too much until we were confident that we were going to be able to pull it off, but it was working pretty well last weekend, or 2 weekends ago. So
that's
we're
something that's very friendly to something like the Ouya, or like one of those
That's also under discussion within our group. So I mean, on Facebook, in terms of we have like a public page, but we also have a group that is open. But we generally put like more developer conversation in that group. So we love when people give us feedback. So we'll it's more like shop talk, but anybody's welcome to like talk about the Ouya, for example, and give us awesome ideas about that sort of stuff. But yeah, we're looking. I mean, ultimately with unlimited time and unlimited money, we would want to be on every platform possible. But since we live in reality, we're going to target one for now. And I'd really like to see us move in to basically all of the things that Unity exports to at some point. But there's a lot of work that goes into it, redesigning UI for various platforms. And I think, 3 or 4 times I've said I don't like doing UI. It's hard. It's really hard. That's why people get paid to do just that. But anyways, I digress. There is, we do want to support. It's a lofty goal. So if Steam treats us well, we would, and fans like it, we'll definitely start moving out to other platforms. And as many as we can support, we will attempt to.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. All right, thank you guys very much. I think we'll let the next one come.
This is sort of a little project that we started. We're just at the beginning. So all that fancy stuff that you just heard, take that and scale it back significantly, because there's only 2 of us. I'm Zach Erdis. I was a recent MICA grad, Maryland Institute College of Art. And so I'm heading the art and all that fun stuff. And Sam is the programmer, the code wrangler, as he calls it. Yep. Should we say where you work?
Sure.
Sam is a UI programmer at Firaxis Games.
I know your pain, sir. I know it all too well.
Yeah.
Like,
so
UI.
he was recently a part of the team that made XCOM Enemy Unknown, which was a ton of fun. If I do say so myself, because.
But since I'm just a lowly UI programmer, I don't have the creative satisfaction that I crave for. So
yeah, he's in an army of people that are pushing out a product that's driven by higher ups that he never even sees. So we met at a game jam, the Global Game Jam, in fact, last January, and we made this little prototype. It's called Star Sling. And it was a game that was about. Let me flip the next one, and we'll see if this sounds familiar. You have a projectile, and you have to launch it around the gravitational pull of planets. So we made this game. 48 hours game jam. We won at that location, which was really exciting. They weren't sponsored, so all we got was a bunch of Think Geek swag. But winning, that was the important part. That was what we cared about. Yeah. There's a screen. Why am I looking at that screen? We're running off 3 hours of sleep here, so bear with us. So we made this game, and we thought it had a lot of potential, and we started to develop on it. And by the way, the title is The Quest for the Fun, because it's something that we've had a lot of challenge presenting, is finding that core thing that makes your game fun. You can develop a prototype, and it sounds great, and then you load it up, and you're like, oh, yeah, this is garbage. So wrestling with that problem has been sort of the crux of our relationship for the past year or so. So this game, yeah, there's a picture of the original team that did Star Sling. So basically, what this game is it's Angry Birds in Space 2 months before Angry Birds in Space came out. So Angry Birds in Space came out, and we were like, well, oh well.
There goes that idea.
Yeah, so I feel like it's important to know when to move on. And me and Sam were both incredibly driven, and the other team members, we sort of parted ways with them because they're already a part of a little startup in Baltimore County. And we started to work on our own stuff. These are little art samples from a game we started working on called Robot Ninja, where we thought, oh, it'll be great if we have a robot, and he runs along, and you only have two commands. You have a jump and an attack, and you always move forward. And it's like a simple little mobile thing where you can do it on a touch screen or whatever. And it sounded really good on paper, and then we tried it, and it just wasn't very fun. Honestly, it failed at the core essential, so we decided to.
Admittedly, we didn't give this prototype a whole lot of time
true.
to shine, right? The problem with this prototype was that I was finding myself spending a lot of time creating one-off pieces of code and one-off pieces of content specific for one small turret, or specific for like the player, to make sure that the animation, the collisions all feel right. While nailing the feel of the gameplay is important, I was spending way too much time trying to even get to a point where we could test whether this game is fun or not. Mm-hmm. And after, I think, 3 weeks to implement an enemy system, I was a little burned out from the idea. So we decided to move on.
Yeah, we this could be a lesson in when to give up, or it could also be a cautionary tale of two designers who don't know when they're satisfied.
But here's the thing, the project is always there. So every time you make a prototype, whether it's successful or not, it's always a success. It's always a positive learning experience.
And nothing is ever wasted.
We
still, in our most recent builds, we still use some of the code that we started with this.
Nothing's ever wasted unless you don't use source control. So use source control. It is necessary.
Yeah, everything is recycled. And with a two-man team like us, the programming is all done by one person. So using as much of the code that we've already made is crucial. We wouldn't be able to progress otherwise. So now we get into our baby, the game that we, you want to maybe dim the... So this is the game that we really want to make. This is the game that we've been in sort of production of for the past several months. It's called Robros, and it's a co-op game. And I've even done some animation and stuff. We have some orthographs here, a lot of art. But essentially, it's two robots who have to work together to get out of like an evil laboratory type situation, something like Portal. It would have an AI that would be bantering with them the whole way. And the core concept was originally, can I get to where's, I don't think I included the core. The original concept was that the two robots would have locked directions. Like they'd only be able to face left or right. So if they wanted to both shoot at the same enemy, they'd have to jump over top of each other. And if they wanted to, like if someone was coming behind, say, Lefty, Scrump would have to jump in and shoot because he couldn't reorient himself.
Lefty is the blue one, Scrump is the red one.
Yes. It's also Lefty is the one that's facing left.
Yes.
You guys didn't know that. So it sounds really good, right? It sounds like it encourages co-op. It sounds like it encourages working together as a team, talking about planning out where you're going to go and how you're going to go about it.
It was a really, really good idea for like puzzle mechanics, where you could put a switch here that only one player can reach, or you could put an enemy there that's strategically placed so that the other player has to go first to kill that guy, and then players would have to coordinate to finish the levels. And we really liked that approach. Like we liked what that offered.
Mm-hmm. But sadly, when we started playtesting it, we actually got a build up and running. It was pretty stable. We realized that it just, again, it wasn't fun. That elusive fun, where did it go?
Here was, like, we were playing this game, and I was second guessing the assumptions that we had made. Like, I felt restricted by the movement lock, and I didn't. If the game somehow explained very well why you're limited to one direction, I think I would maybe buy it. But the way we implemented it, the way we were approaching the movement controls and the input and all those things, it just didn't feel right.
Yeah, well,
it felt like a restriction, an arbitrary restriction.
We realized things that, like, for instance, when we were designing levels, we realized that the level had to be equal parts moving left and equal parts moving right, because otherwise one of the players would feel left out. And so challenges like that really, they didn't enhance the game design. They didn't give us a sort of, usually putting a restriction on the players is a way to spawn creativity, but in this case it just sort of stagnated the overall design. So we ditched that idea, and now we're at this place where the two players can combine in a variety of different ways. So up there you'll see that Lefty can turn into a sword, he can turn into a gun turret mounted on the back of Scrump. And so Scrump will always be the one who is moving around, but Lefty, in each one of these, and we've been challenging ourselves to do this, in each one of these modes, Lefty and Scrump are equally engaged in different ways.
So, for example, with the cannon, Scrump is moving around and Lefty's attached to him.
Right here.
But Lefty's the one that aims the cannon and shoots. So Scrump is basically kind of just carrying Lefty around, and Lefty does the action. So even though Scrump is more empowered because he has the freedom of movement, Lefty is really the one that has to do all the actions in order to succeed.
This was the first little sketch I did that really got us thinking of like in tandem asymmetrical gameplay that could lead to really interesting combos. Like if you threw an explosive crate and then Lefty shot at the crate in midair, it would explode and have an area of effect. And so we really like that idea. There's an early build. I wanted to talk briefly about the character art over here, because when I iterate on things as an artist, I'll make something. Like I made iteration 2 here. After the sketch, I made iteration 2, and I was like, oh, these are awesome. I love these. They're great. And I fell in love with them, and that was a problem, because you never want to fall in love with anything you do in a game, ever. I learned that the hard way. So we scrapped those. We moved on to iteration 3. I like these a lot too. I loved them. I thought they were awesome. They were great. This is the final. I can feel it. And Sam was like, nope, do it again. So then iteration 4 happened, and I don't ever learn, because now I love these and I think they're great and fantastic.
I think if we ever put this game out, like the Scrump and Lefty will be like iteration 19 or something crazy. Like
that. He'll be working on the code, and I'll just be redrawing Scrump and Lefty again. That'll be our Saturday afternoons. So there's the one of the first builds after we had integrated Nape physics, which is something that Sam's going to talk about when the slide comes up. But that was a huge drop for us. And basically, what's been happening with Robros is every time we sit down to implement, say, the sword or the jetpack or the javelin, that's actually a really funny image there. Lefties. Poor Lefty being thrown by that. So what we've been doing is we've been doing a lot of infrastructure work. We've been doing work with the physics engine. We've been doing work with scripting levels. Sam wrote a scripting system that would allow a layman like myself to program levels in tiled. It's very sort of simple to use, and it's something that is, again, it's tech. It's tech that we're building and building and building, and it all sort of snowballs. So the background time, say we want to start a new prototype, the background time to start on that prototype is going to be much, much decreased because we have all of this background work that we've already done.
One of this concept started to suffer from the same issues as Robot Ninja, right? Where we had the movement down, that was easy. I put it in physics, that wasn't too hard. It was fairly simple to put in. I added Scrump could pick up and throw things, he could pick up Lefty, it was pretty interesting. And then you realize, like, okay, so I'm gonna make a sword. You don't understand, you could implement that sword, but until that becomes fun, you need enemies, you need explosions, you need feedback, you need a lot of extra support in order to
get to the fun.
Yeah, in order to get to the fun of a concept. And that was starting to weigh me down because I'm the only programmer in this duo.
Yeah,
it was a lot of work to handle by myself.
The point is, we're a little two-man team. We're minuscule, right? And I just got out of college. I don't have a job in the industry as much as I would love one. So we've been sort of taking this one step at a time and realizing that we have to scale back our ambitions. This is our dream game. This is the game we get to make when things start to work. So sadly, we decided to, for the time being, shelve it. We had a conversation with
Elliot Pace.
Elliot Pace, who is the nicest guy you'll ever meet. But he has been independent, making games by himself, single man studio, for the past 2 years. He'll produce a game for 2 months, and he'll live for 2 months off of it. So he can pretty much sustain himself by making games. And he makes these little flash titles that are really simple, really stupid, and not stupid, that are like really, really, simplified and
As he calls them, toilet paper experiences.
Yes.
It's like these nice little
games. You have you
satisfaction.
spend your time with them, and then you move on. You forget
Yep,
about them.
Done.
But you can sell them to flash license sites for quite a bit of money, and he's been very successful. And so his business model really inspired us to sort of take a step back, make a prototype that was very, very simple. And then I got an email from Jesse, and I was like, oh my God, Terp Fest is in like a week. What are we going to do? So we met on Friday, and, so 3 months after all that, after all the heartache and the working on Robros and stuff, bam, this little thing showed up. We call it Robo Arena, but it's still a working title. Basically, we took all the Nape physics and all the stuff that we already had. These are the tile sheets that we were using. And we made new characters, we made new boxes, and it's basically a game that spawns boxes. You pick them up, and you throw them at your enemy. And so you're just trying to get your enemy into the spike pit. It's a very, very simple concept, but with tight controls, we really do believe that it can be a really in-depth experience because there's a lot of strategy involved. Yeah, kill shots, that sort of thing. Basically, what happened was we've been staring at this for the past 12 hours, and when you embark on something like this, there's a lot of trust and faith involved because at the end of the day, you're going to work for 12 hours, and when you finally get the chance to sit down and play it, it's either going to be fun or it's not. And there's some things you can tweak and try, but at the end of the day, it's either going to be fun or it's not. And we think it's fun.
Yeah, and
We found the fun.
It's
Yeah,
kind
right?
of
We had a little
interesting
party.
to note that this whole game, this whole thing, came together maybe in the last maybe at between 4 and 6 o'clock in the morning. Like we were just struggling for hours, and it was all taking all the pieces that we had built previously and putting them together in a way that made sense and was cohesive, in a way that could be tweaked and balanced so that we could achieve something that's fun, like the weight of the boxes or the velocity of the throw. And I'll talk about how I did that and how I managed to make iteration fast in a little bit.
Yeah, and this game is the game we'll be presenting. It's the game you guys will get to play, and we're really excited to hear what you think. So Sam's going to talk a bit about the tech. You want the microphone?
Yeah, sure. So, being a two-man team, and even though I do have a daytime job and I do have stable source of income, I'm still broke because of student loans and the situation in this country. So the motto or the goal when I started talking to Zach to make our own projects was zero budget development. Zero budget. Like, everything has to be free. Everything has to, I have to be able to fix any problems that come my way if I have to on my own without paying someone, right? So I started doing some research, and I found this language called Hacks, which it's a language that's very similar to ActionScript in C#. It's like if ActionScript in C# had a baby, it would be Hacks. And it's a language that doesn't really run, or it doesn't compile to a machine, it compiles to other languages. So Hacks compiles to C++, so you can run it on Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, BlackBerry, any machine that runs C++, which is any machine, or Flash, or JavaScript, or almost any other language you can
It's an
think of.
incredibly versatile language. So
It's very versatile, and it's the best part of all. It's open source.
he snuck that into the. I didn't
Yeah.
put that there. One language to rule them all.
It's open source in every one of these. So Enemy is a library. It's like a rendering library for Hacks, and Hacks Flixel is a port of the Flixel engine. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's a very simple. It's a pretty beefy Flash game engine that has a lot of pre-built constructs that for me were essential, like tile sheets. I don't want to spend my time implementing a tile sheet renderer. I just want to load them and display them, and Flixel really did facilitate things greatly.
Yeah, the open source revolution has really opened up has severely lowered the bar to entry for indie development.
Yeah, and once you play the game, you'll realize that it's possible to make a pretty compelling experience with virtually no budget. Like it's open source. We also use a physics engine called Nape. It's written in Hacks, and we use tiled map editor, which is also open source and really useful to build art levels, and Flash Develop, which is an open source IDE. So we have an open source compiler, an open source rendering framework, an open source game engine, and open source everything.
Yeah.
And it worked out pretty awesome for us, at least.
And like I said before, now that the infrastructure is all there, we can push forward, and we actually have like a really decent footing and a solid direction of where we're headed.
It does have its downsides, though. For example, NME is a framework that implements the Flash display list in C++. Like someone actually just went and built Flash on their own in Hacks language, and it breaks relatively often because it supports so many platforms. It supports Windows, Linux, Mac, Android, iOS, BlackBerry, and there's on some platform somewhere there's always a feature that's broken, and it's really hard to track down who can fix it. So it's definitely not beginner friendly using Hacks or Hacks Flixel or any of these open source languages, because more often than not you're gonna find yourself having to get dirty with the innards of these things, which is C++ and really crazy code.
So here, before we move on, to recap about the fun, I feel like this has been a sort of a voyage. We'll call it the fellowship of the fun, with your little Lord of the Rings joke in there. So Starsling taught us that it's just fun to. I don't know what Starsling taught us. We're moving on. No, it's like. The jumping and the maneuvering characters was something that we took from this as being, working towards fun. Robros taught us that working with your buddies was a good idea. Whenever you can include more than one player, they feed off of each other, and there's less interface requirement from the player to the game, and there's more from player to player.
So I remember this one time in this project when I finally put in picking up Lefty. There were no enemies. There was no levels. It was just like a canvas, and you could pick up someone. And I gave the controllers, the two controllers to Zach and his brother, and they were just like tossing each other around, and they were having a good time, just moving around and picking up and being like, "Oh, this is so silly." So it's surprising how much fun you can get from small interactions between people.
Yeah, so in reality, what seemed like this sort of big eureka moment was actually sort of a slow build that had a really incredible payoff. And so I think, that's it. That's the whole presentation. So thank you very much for listening to us ramble, and we will take questions.
Anyone? No?
Questions?
Do you have any game development experiences prior to all of these games?
I do not. Sam has been working.
Yeah, I received formal education in game development. I went to Full Sail University in Florida,
Nice.
and you would think that would be super awesome for someone who wants to get into games. I don't really recommend that approach because it left me burdened for life with like 80 grand's worth of loans. And you could do the same thing if you're motivated and go to community college or go to your computer science, just take a computer science degree somewhere and build your own games, because like you said, the barrier of entry for game development nowadays, for high quality game development, is very low. So anybody can.
Yeah,
can
and
do it.
I started doing illustration, like formal illustration. I have a bachelor's degree in illustration from Micah, and so the game development sort of just happened in my third year. I wish I had discovered the passion sooner, because by then I couldn't really take much animation courses. So I've taught myself most puppet animation and particle animation and that sort of thing. And so being the sole artist on a project is incredibly intimidating, because there's so much that I am learning as I go. And that's the case with most indie development, from what I understand. But it's an experience.
So you guys kind of talked about where you're at. What's next?
What is next?
That is the question, the $1 million question.
Yeah, we do want to continue work on Robo Arena, which is the working title for this project.
So we mentioned Ouya before, right? I think this game would be awesome on Ouya. Like, you don't even need a whole lot more. You just need some more variations on some of the things that fall, maybe like a bomb or something that you can, like a barrier or whatever. We could add some variation to the game with relatively low amount of effort, and release it on the Ouya for $1 or for free with ads, or for free with microtransactions. I'm not sure. The Ouya is not here yet. We haven't had the chance to test on one of the hardware devices, but that's something that we're very interested in, and we're also sort of keeping tabs on the Flash game market, which is very different. It's a very different market from the types of games that I usually like to work on, but because it's so easy to get started and get something completed, I think that's something that we'll continue to evaluate as well.
Yeah, and
we're not a company yet, so I mean, there's stuff to be done.
so the answer to that question is we'll let you know when we get there.
Follow-up.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you're really interested also in the Flash community, so I was just curious, do you feel like that's still sort of a viable market out there? Because Flash is starting to sort of lose market share.
So
Yeah.
here's how I see it, right? Flash is losing market share, right? There's a lot more people playing games on mobile devices, which don't support Flash and support HTML5. So I've seen a trend, which has happened in cycles many times, where a lot of people jump from Flash into hacks or into HTML5 or into several other like Flash-like APIs that provide a way to get games on whatever target you want, right? But that core market, even though it's shrunk in terms of developers and in terms of users, because it's shrunk in terms of developers, it's always going to continue to be a viable market as long as there are Flash players around and as long as there's someone willing to pay, and there are a lot of people willing to pay.
Yeah, it's a massive market, and the point is, a diminishing massive market is still a massive market.
Yeah.
It's too bad Steve Jobs killed the Flash build for the iPhone.
Yeah, too bad. Like
It's a shame.
Have you tried using Flash on an Android? Because it's not fun.
It's not, but here's the thing, people step up to provide alternatives, and Hacks plus NME is exactly that. It's an attempt at making an open source Flash framework for Android and iOS, which we leverage and which works mostly well, and occasionally requires significant effort to dig into its core and find out what's going on.
Yeah, I think it was about 2 a.m. And the Windows target on my computer just crashed. And so Sam sat down and spent about 3 hours trying to get it up and running. And he finally got it up and running, and I sat down and loaded it again, and it didn't work. So it was like this big, so...
There are drawbacks. There are drawbacks to using software that's not backed by, a corporate entity, backed by powerful financing. But it's free. And honestly, I've really had an awesome time participating in the community as well and submitting fixes for issues that I find, and it's just gratifying as a developer.
To answer your question, we have about 30 likes on our Facebook page. So neener. So, any other questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I actually joined Taro and Naeem after they'd been together about 6 months. Taro, Naeem, and I worked together at a Boeing-owned company. I'm in the marketing department for it. And the way I came aboard was my wife bought me my brand new iPad. I'm like, yay, and I'm walking to work, and I'm all happy and proud. And someone said, did you know that Nick does apps? I'm like, no. So I run over to find Nick, and I run into him in the hallway, and we had this short conversation. He's published a few. He had published 3 iPhone apps. I'm like, hey, Nick, how'd they do? He's like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, why? He's like, I didn't have any marketing. Ooh. And that was the birth of our relationship. And while at that point, Taro and him were already working on the first major app we published, which was Solitaire Double Deck HD. Back when it started, they did a market analysis of the games that are out there, and Solitaire, everybody plays Solitaire, but there wasn't very many double deck Solitaire games. So that's basically what we published. And we can show it later. But what else do we do? Let's see. I don't have as many slides as anybody of the other people, but we have more games published and more Facebook likes. So the first one we did, like I said, is we did Solitaire Double Deck for the iPad. It took us about a year from start to finish to get it published. We published it January 31st of 2012. One of the things I wanted to show was highlighting the different app stores, because this is the total, all the apps that we have out there. And if you just look at that big blue part, it shows that over half of our downloads are for the iPad. A big portion of this, quite honestly, is some of the free promotional stuff. And that's one of the reasons why I asked earlier, one of the other guys, is if you had marketing, because you can have the best app in the world out there, but if no one knows about it, no one will ever buy it. So you have to think of it early, and you have to do a lot about it. So that looks great, right? That looks fantastic. The next slide, we sell the most on Barnes & Noble. And the last group that was up there, you said Flash games are still up there and people are still buying them. That could be a really huge potential, because if you have dedicated Flash games out there, dedicated Flash buyers out there, it's a smaller market, a lot higher chance of getting your app noticed or your game noticed. So definitely want to point those things out. Okay. What I really was hoping to focus on today was talking about how we developed one of our other games. It's called ABC Sing and Learn, and we got an email. Actually, all Barnes & Noble developers got an email from Barnes & Noble saying, hey, give us an educational app, and it was 30 days away. In 30 days, and we will actively promote it. So we took a week, because we all have day jobs. We took a week kind of pondering it, and could we even do it, because we're in the midst of publishing the Solitaire game to the iPhone and working on our other major game, which is Swarm. And we'll have all these here later. But we teamed with Taro, Naeem, and our art director, Chris Totten. He's a associate professor at George Mason University teaching game art design. 3 weeks from the day we sat down to the time the game was published. And I think the significant thing about that, and after the day we started, is we all gathered in the room and we framed the problem. We after we decided what we were going to do, everybody that's going to be participating, like I said, we narrowed down our scope and we decided exactly what we could do. So after we did it, it was, I won't get into the details of how, but I'll let Taro talk about the details. We did an after action at the end of publishing it, and it seems like one of the biggest benefits of doing it this way was how it looked. And I'm not a programmer. I can barely speak techese, but I play games. I love games. If it's on if it's a mobile device, if it's a Windows device, if it's a game, I want to play it. So literally what I did is after we decided that first week to do this ABC app, the left side is a PowerPoint. I took a picture of a Nook and just threw pictures on there of where I envision things to be. And the right is the finished product. So doing it that way enabled Taro and our art director to just fill in the blank. He could be working independently, having this space ready for the boy's head, for the letters, where our art was working independently. He just dropped the asset right there. And correct me at any point as we're talking.
That's correct.
So this, I think, was one of everybody unanimously said this is what really helped us get it done in a short period of time. That is the crux of the slideshow. So most of it I wanted to pass over to Taro to get in depth of, we use Unity for our programming,
Yep.
and
Sure. So rear, as you can tell, rapid iteration prototyping. In our case, we were glad to have a complete PowerPoint slide on exactly what it's supposed to look like. And because I'm generally work as a UI programmer, yay! UI programmer at Boeing here. I'm used to the concept of just taking a photograph and make it look like this somehow, some way. So that kind of worked well. On top of that, I'm also used to going to at least like 4 or 5 different game jams, all that took only about 8 hours long. And I'm perfectly used to these sort of rapid prototyping. The way I typically do it is one thing that for GUI I found easiest was to have the visuals in there, like where it's positioned, and worry about what it does later. So that's what I started with. I just had it graphically look exactly like what it looked like on a PowerPoint slide, using basically squares. I didn't even bother to put in letters or any sort of art assets like that. And then from there I said, okay, these set of buttons do the same thing. I should program it in this way with one line of script. These buttons do the same thing. I should do it with this line of script. We were using a plugin named EasyGUI at that time. So a lot of times I was using that to make the process a lot easier. My philosophy on making games is the less programming there is, the better. So that's the way I made that. Again, largely because to me, at least, I've noticed that programming tends to be the biggest bottleneck. That is the part that everybody ends up waiting for, because it is the hardest part of the entire development. So, like I said, I do my best to minimize my programming time as much as possible. I try to reuse something. If there's a feature in Unity, I use that instead. If there's a plugin, I ask Nick to buy it for us, and we do that. Time obviously is of essence here. And that's what it ended up to be. Typically, when an artist tosses me an artwork, it turns out to be in a specific format or in a specific way that's not as I intended. But I usually can adapt to it pretty quickly because of my relatively good knowledge of Unity. So that usually does not end up being much of a problem. So, like Bill said, it's always a good idea to have placeholders almost immediately. You really should not wait for artists to get it done. You just make it happen. Make it so that you can demonstrate it work. And then once the art assets comes in, start integrating in them one by one. So that's the programming end of things. Especially, there's also like weird quirks with mobile. I mean, with Nook being one of them, Androids being one of them, and iPads being another beast on its own. They all have weird, different problems that you had to accommodate for, and that's always an interesting one.
And one of the things along those lines, like Tar said, we use Unity 3D for the programming, and I wish Nick was here because he says this so eloquently. But I always relate it to, you do the 90% of the programming in Unity, you export it to iOS, and then it's that final 10% of the time, or even less, that tweaks it, optimizes it for the iOS device.
Right.
So instead of recreating the wheel per device, you export, tweak, publish, export, tweak, publish. So when I glanced at this after seeing it on the board, I just realized that we have games on different platforms Well, there's a reason for, and we're not on all our games aren't on all, and the reason for that is the Arts by George was only on Google Play. It was a one-of app done for George Mason University, and interesting on this actually is that iTunes turned it down. They denied this game, or excuse me, this app, because it was too narrowly focused. It was a one-day event, and it's basically a map and an outline and a schedule for this event. It had an Easter egg in there. It had our main character in our Swarm game, so if you tapped a thing, you could play it a little bit with bad guys chasing around the screen, but iTunes denied it. So just wanted to point that out as a thing to keep in mind as you move forward and you're looking to publish on different platforms.
Well, yeah, I mean, like even in different platforms, the market is different. A lot of times, Android expects something to be free, as a great example. versus
Absolutely.
iPad. With the iPad's case, so this is a really quick programming thing, but iPad is great for graphics. A lot of times when it ended up something like with art assets where there were a lot of vertices or something like that with art models, with more complexity, iPad can handle it better than any of the Android devices that we were dealing with. But when it came to memory, how many stuff we had on screen, how many stuff that we put into the game, or explosions or stuff like that, iPad did worse. It would actually more likely crash than any other device that we were working with. So iPad tends to be great when graphics, it tends to be terrible in the memory department. Android is exactly the opposite, where it's terrible in the graphics department. You really have to dumb down a lot of things and make it a lot more crude looking, but it can handle memory extremely well. Like my Android phone, for example, the Solitaire Double Deck HD, what it actually did was it dumped out the entire UI, its own home screen UI, to make that game run. And we were surprised when we did this because it was a really underpowered phone. So we're like, it can't handle this, but it was able to do it. So there's those two quirks that you always have to deal with. I think for the Nook and the Kindle Fire, basically it follows the same Android mechanisms, so they can handle memory a little better. I believe the memory size for Kindle Fire is about the same as the first iPad, so you do have to worry about that minor details. But yeah, generally speaking, they do have their differences on top of their audience, on top of the devices that you really need to be careful about when you're dealing with these markets.
Yeah, the only other topic I really want to talk about was the marketing aspect, because like the other piece I didn't mention was when I met Nick initially, I had one final class to finish my master's degree. I've been working on it for 7 years, and I've been putting it off for 6 months. I finally got my hands on the syllabus, and one of the topics was doing a marketing plan for a startup. So our marketing plan was my final master's project. Looking back in time, 2.5 years now, it's not very good, should I say, but it did teach me a lot, because actually the 2.5 years now that we've been working with Solitaire, we've learned a lot, and I've kind of formalized a rule set in my mind for marketing mobile apps, and I always, if we can get into this further in the question and answer if you want, but it's if you got to get the Apple's attention, you got to get the main store's attention. If you're there, you're golden. You're going to sell 100,000 on a day. That is what it is. If you're highlighted on the front page in Apple in iTunes, that's 100,000 downloads. The other two aspects of that is reviews, blog reviews, postings, and I'm drawing a total blank on what my other.
Word of mouth.
Yeah, word of mouth. Okay, so and word of mouth, and by word of mouth, that most of our sustained sales for Solitaire, like if you look, there's a huge amount of interest for Solitaire. We sell a lot of those every day, and we don't do much active marketing. We've put most of their effort over this last year into Swarm. So all of that is just from word of mouth. It's you're playing a game, your buddy comes up next to you, what is that game? And you tell him. That right there is invaluable. A lot of the things we've done too is to leverage social media to get the word out. So the way we have almost 600 Twitter followers, And it's really, really relatively easy to get Twitter followers. They just want a contest. They don't care what they win. They want a contest. Make a hat for $5 and you'll gain 100 followers. I'm telling you, that's just simple ones like that. And there's a lot more things like that you can do, but contests are the name of the game to gain followers on Twitter. Facebook is a different group of people, but in a different way of doing it, but still similar. So that's really about what we had in mind. So any questions?
I'd like to get a little more detail about the Twitter thing you just said about the $5 hat.
Right.
Like, continue on that hypothetical, if you will.
Okay. Well, basically, it's like, okay, I'll get more into what I mean. That falls under my umbrella of word of mouth. Okay, it's you and I are talking, but over Twitter. It's still word of mouth. It's just over digital. So you have to be responsive. You have to be reactive. And one of the biggest things I had to learn was I wasn't even on Twitter and Facebook when we started doing this. It just never did it. So I had to learn that whole aspect of it. You have to get something of relative perceived value to be the target. People like hats, people like t-shirts, people love gift cards. You know, if you can do a once a quarter gift card giveaway, oh my goodness. A $25 gift card from Amazon is humongous.
But what would be like the sort of contest? Like, what would you contest your...
When I reach this many followers, I'm giving it away.
Okay.
And see, it's perfect because it's self-perpetuating. You know, if you pick a number, you have 26 right now or whatever, you make it 40. That's not that many, or you could even do 30. At 30, I'm going to give away a hat, whatever. You do something realistic, but have it growing. And as you get there, you just have to keep pumping it out. You just send out the reminders. And if you do the hashtag a prize or award or things like that, or win, oh my goodness, you know. The one negative thing is about a third of those are just the people who want prizes. They're not really interested in the game.
But how do you, I guess my question is, how do people see that? Does it just show up randomly in their, I'm alien to Twitter. Like,
okay. It's, there's a lot of different ways. If you follow someone and they post something, you see it, just similar to Facebook, right? It pops up, but you can also search for things. So all those people that, the way it works is you have to follow me and retweet it. So someone who's only on Twitter for winning games will follow 30,000 people. And a lot of those big companies out there, major companies out there, if you follow them, they'll automatically follow you back. Okay, so if 1% of those people that this just a person who followed me because wants to win a game reach the right person, I've satisfied it. And every day we're getting more because of that second and third tertiary effect. Does that kind of make sense a little bit?
Totally.
And I'm kind of talking around in circles, but
do you have any similar strategies for like Facebook or Tumblr or this sort of thing?
all similar, but I'm still learning, quite honestly. Yeah.
Videos are usually an effective method of marketing.
Yeah.
I also heard Reddit was also pretty good.
Actually, YouTube is huge. Is this on the internet, by the way? Okay.
Reddit is finicky though.
Reddit is finicky.
Like you'll put up something and be like, I'm so proud of this, and then Reddit will just downvote it to oblivion. And you're like, what happened?
HD.
Okay. 10,000 views for our video. So, oh, we have sound. It's huge. The biggest target audience, well, the second biggest is US. The second biggest is Russia. I don't know why, but
Wasn't there some time where like Ukraine was our biggest market or something?
so never would have thought, but Russia loves this freaking video. And our second or third biggest customer is Russia, and like the third and fourth biggest customer set is that whole Slavic language countries. So something about Solitaire Double Deck HD, they love it. So
I think we even have a demo up, but we'll talk about that.
yeah, Please.
Quick question: did you hire someone to do this video, or did you do it yourself?
I did.
If you're asking about the artwork, yes, we did.
Oh, the artwork is, no, our artist did it, but I put the video together. You can buy, I forget the name of the app, but there's like a $30 live streaming thing. You can, whatever's on your screen, you can copy to a video, and then Windows Movie Maker is what I use to make it.
Yeah, Open Broadcaster is a great service that is.
There's a whole bunch out there.
Open source with our whole open source gospel.
What do you think are the most important thing that you learned in marketing video games?
It's honestly the hardest thing is getting the word out there. It's app discovery. It's crazy hard, and literally we're extremely lucky because of many reasons. But one in particular is Chris Totten works at George Mason University, and he has access to students, and students have internships. Right? It's free labor. Hint hint, knock knock. It's awesome. And so the stuff that takes a long time, like finding the secret, if there is one secret, and if you just do this, it will help. It's find known, named reviewers out there that are well known in the communities. Pick your community, whatever your target is. Flash Games, find the site that everybody goes to. Find the guy that everybody relates to Flash Games and become recognizable as a name by him. And the way you do that is he's going to post a blog site somewhere, comment on it, of value. He'll read it because it's his blog, and if it's of value, he might even respond to you. Just do it focused on that, repeatedly. Build up a virtual relationship with these people, so when it happens to come up, has anybody else ever done a game? Well, yeah, here's a link to mine. It's worked really well.
Oh, so you're like talking to bloggers and that kind of thing?
Absolutely.
That's really good advice.
Relationships is the biggest thing.
Yeah, I found that in this sort of this world of like programming introverts, like socializing is so difficult.
Yeah, very hard. So
Also contact them directly anyways.
yeah. And like the lesson I learned actually with Solitaire was I sent out tons of emails with press releases and I got like no responses. I got none. I got one out of maybe 100 emails. And I went back after the fact, and it's just Solitaire. Who wants to look at another Solitaire game? Right. So our name sucks for that game. It sucks. It's descriptive, but the name sucks. Okay? So our internal name was Cyclops. I don't know why, but we called it Cyclops. Doesn't mean anything, doesn't really think, but that's kind of cool. What does it mean? Games, cards? No. You might give it a second thought. When a reviewer sees an email, and there's been some great, amazing articles talking about this from reviewers, is they have between 3 and 6 seconds to glance at that email. If it doesn't catch their attention, they're going to flush it. They want to give it a second thought. So when we got around to our ABCs app, and Swarm in particular, I took a totally different approach when I did the emails and the blind emails to people I didn't have relationships with of potential reviewers. And it's basically, I don't want to give the secret sauce, but you have to get something snappy, and it was something that caught their eye that made people want to open it. So it's like, hey, exclusive this or unique that, or something that means I'm only sending it to you. 1,000 other people, but only you. So that's what you want them to think. I know it's kind of vague, but again, can't give the secret sauce. Yeah, it's crazy hard, and that was the hardest thing. Yes.
Also, the name is very, like with Solid, it's just very important to try to
It's
capture.
hugely important. It's like Swarm. What do you think of when you hear Swarm? Bees. And we have iPads and tablets and stuff with Swarm, but that was the first art prototype of Swarm. The main protagonist is the guy running away, but it's a swarm of enemies on different levels. On one of the levels, it's bees. So the name is perfect for that because that's perfect. But Solitaire Double Deck HD, oh my God, it takes forever to say it.
At the end of the day, it's still Solitaire.
Right. But Cyclops Solitaire. Ooh, what? Maybe. Or Cyclops Sol, I don't know.
There is a reason behind Solitaire, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Ethereal Kingdom.
That's it.
Hey guys, that's the end of our Terp Indie Game Fest, the presentations. Developers just go down to the Carol Room and start setting up. Everybody else, I know some of y'all got a little late. You can just start playing the games down there when they start setting up for the playroom down there. I'd like to thank you all guys for coming. So, thank you.